Hello, everyone. Every single day, millions of people wake up and immediately begin performing, not for themselves, but for an invisible audience that may not even be watching. Welcome. Today, we are going to talk about something that is quietly stealing your joy, draining your energy, and keeping you trapped in a life that doesn't belong to you. We're going to talk about the exhausting, relentless, and deeply human habit of seeking other people's approval, and more importantly, how you can finally, completely, and permanently let it go. This is not a motivational speech filled with empty promises. This is a real, honest, and deeply personal conversation about why you overthink every text message you send, why you replay conversations in your head at 2 in the morning, why you dress for other people, speak for other people, and sometimes even choose your career, your partner, and your entire life path based on what other people might think. By the end of this script, you will understand where this approval-seeking behavior comes from, what it is truly costing you, and exactly how to break free from it so that you can finally live a life of genuine peace, authentic freedom, and unshakable inner confidence. So take a deep breath. This one is for you. Part 1. The Invisible Prison. Understanding Approval Addiction. Let us start with a story. Meet Daniel. Daniel is a 29-year-old marketing professional living in Chicago, Illinois. From the outside, Daniel has everything together. He has a good job at a reputable firm on Michigan Avenue, a clean apartment in Lincoln Park, a solid group of friends, and a social media profile that looks like a highlight reel from a travel magazine. People look at Daniel and think, he's got it figured out. But here is what nobody sees. Every morning, before Daniel even gets out of bed, he checks his Instagram to see how many likes his last post got. If the number is lower than usual, his mood drops. He spends 20 extra minutes choosing his outfit, not because he wants to look good for himself, but because his coworker James once made a passing comment on his jacket, and now Daniel second-guesses every single wardrobe decision. Before sending an email at work, he rewrites it 4 or 5 times, terrified that his manager might think he's not smart enough. At dinner with friends, he doesn't order what he actually wants. He orders something that sounds impressive, something that makes him seem cultured and refined. Daniel is not living his life. Daniel is performing it. And the tragedy is that Daniel is not unique. Daniel is everywhere. Daniel might be you. This invisible prison, the prison of other people's opinions, is one of the most universal forms of human suffering. It crosses borders, cultures, and generations. In London, you have Sophie, a 34-year-old schoolteacher from East London who stays in a relationship she has outgrown because she is terrified of what her family will say if she leaves. In Tokyo, there's Kenji, a 27-year-old graphic designer who secretly wants to start his own design studio, but keeps working at a corporate job because quitting would mean disappointing his father. In Mumbai, there's Priya, a 31-year-old woman who has been wearing traditional clothes she doesn't love for years because her neighbors have expectations about how a woman from her neighborhood should dress. Different countries, different names, same prison. The question is, why? Why are we so deeply, almost biologically wired to care about what other people think? The answer lies in our evolutionary history. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, human beings survived not as individuals, but as tribes. Being accepted by your tribe was not just emotionally important, it was literally a matter of life and death. If you were rejected by the group, cast out, or seen as a misfit, you faced starvation, predators, and death alone. The fear of social rejection was hardwired into our nervous systems as a survival mechanism. Your brain learned to treat social disapproval the same way it treats physical danger, with panic, anxiety, and desperate corrective action. Fast forward to 2024. The savannas are gone, the tribal fires are out, but the wiring remains. Your amygdala, your ancient alarm system of your brain, still fires the same distress signals when your colleague gives you a disapproving look as it would if a lion was approaching. Your body doesn't know the difference between a lion and a LinkedIn comment. This is why approval-seeking feels so urgent. This is why overthinking feels so automatic. Your brain genuinely believes that other people's opinions are a matter of survival. But here's the truth that changes everything. They are not. Part 2. The cost of living for others. What approval addiction is stealing from you. Let's talk about the real price you pay when you hand the keys of your life to other people's opinions. 1. It's stealing your time. Think about how many hours of your life you have spent worrying about what someone else thinks of you. Think about every conversation you've replayed in your head, every decision you've postponed because you were waiting for someone else's validation, every creative idea you've buried because you were afraid of judgment. Researchers at Harvard University estimate that the average person spends up to 46.9% of their waking hours thinking about something other than what they are currently doing, and the significant portion of that mental wandering is social anxiety and rumination about what others think. That's nearly half your life, spent living in your head instead of your actual life. 2. It's stealing your authenticity. When you constantly shape yourself to match other people's expectations, you lose track of who you actually are. You begin wearing so many masks for so many different people that one morning you look in the mirror and genuinely don't recognize the person staring back at you. This is what psychologists call identity diffusion, a fragmentation of the self that happens when external validation becomes more important than internal truth. Consider the story of Emma, a 26-year-old woman from Manchester, England. Emma had always loved painting. As a teenager, she filled sketchbook after sketchbook with vibrant, expressive, deeply personal artwork. But when she went to university, she started showing her work to people, and someone once said it looked a bit childish. That one comment from one person on one afternoon was enough for Emma to put down her paintbrushes for 6 years. 6 years of her creative voice, silenced by the opinion of someone who probably doesn't even remember saying it. 3. It's stealing your relationships. Here's a painful irony. The more desperately you seek approval, the less genuinely connected you feel to other people. Why? Because the version of you that people are approving of is not the real you. It's a performance, and deep down, you know it. So even when people compliment you or accept you, it never quite feels real because you're never sure whether they like you or the carefully constructed character you've been playing. True intimacy, the kind that actually satisfies the deep human need for connection, only exists when two real people show up. Masks cannot connect with masks. Performances cannot love performances. 4. It's stealing your mental health. Chronic approval seeking is directly linked to anxiety disorders, depression, and burnout. When your sense of worth is entirely dependent on external feedback, you're riding an emotional roller coaster with no seatbelt. Good feedback sends you soaring. Bad feedback, or even neutral feedback, which your anxious brain interprets as rejection, sends you crashing. You're never stable. You're never safe, because you have placed your safety in the hands of unpredictable, inconsistent, and sometimes deliberately unkind external sources. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that individuals with high levels of need for approval reported significantly higher rates of anxiety, perfectionism, and emotional exhaustion than those who maintained a strong internal locus of self-worth. The research was clear. Outsourcing your self-esteem is a mental health crisis waiting to happen. Part 3. The overthinking trap. How approval seeking hijacks your mind. Overthinking and approval seeking are best friends. They live together, feed each other, and they're absolutely terrible house guests. Here's how the cycle works. You say something in a meeting. Your boss doesn't respond. Your brain immediately launches an investigation. Did I say something wrong? Did I offend him? Does he think I'm incompetent? Should I send an email to clarify? But if I send an email, will that make me seem insecure? What if everyone in the meeting noticed and now they all think I'm... And so it goes. The spiral begins with a neutral event, a lack of response, a glance, a tone of voice, and your approval-hungry brain converts it into a catastrophe. Let's meet Marcus. Marcus is a 32-year-old software engineer living in Austin, Texas. Marcus is brilliant at his job. His code is clean, his solutions are elegant, and his teammates respect him. But Marcus has a habit of sending a text message and then spending the next 2 hours analyzing the reply, or lack of reply. If a friend doesn't respond to his message within 30 minutes, Marcus has already written 3 different narratives about what it means, each worse than the last. He wonders if he said the wrong thing. He goes back and rereads the conversation 3 times. He drafts a follow-up message, deletes that, drafts another one, deletes that too.
By the time his friend replies, who was simply in a meeting, Marcus has already been through an entire emotional odyssey that cost him 2 hours of productive work, a mild headache, and the quiet but persistent feeling of shame. Marcus is not weak. Marcus is not strange. Marcus is dealing with a brain that has been conditioned to treat unanswered messages as social emergencies. The same pattern plays out in bigger, more consequential arenas of life, in career choices, in romantic relationships, in personal ambitions. The overthinking trap convinces you that if you just analyze a situation long enough, you'll find a path through it that guarantees everyone's approval. But that path doesn't exist. You can never think your way to universal acceptance. It's a mathematical impossibility. Here's a number that should set you free. Statistically, even the most beloved, respected, and universally admired human beings in history had significant numbers of people who disliked them. Abraham Lincoln, who was consistently ranked as one of America's greatest presidents, was deeply unpopular during his lifetime, mocked in newspapers,
despised by entire regions of the country, and considered by many of his contemporaries to be an unqualified embarrassment. Nelson Mandela was labeled a terrorist by the British government in the 1980s. Oprah Winfrey was fired from her first television job and told she was unfit for TV. If approval was available to everyone, these people would have had it. They didn't, and they changed the world anyway. The goal is not to eliminate all negative opinions. The goal is to stop letting negative opinions eliminate you. Part 4. The stories we tell ourselves, dismantling the lies of approval seeking. Approval seeking sustains itself through a set of deeply embedded lies that feel, in the moment, like absolute truths. Let us name them, examine them, and dismantle them one by one. Lie 1. If they disapprove of me, something must be wrong with me. This is the foundational lie. It assumes that other people's opinions are accurate measures of your worth. But think about this carefully. The person judging you is looking through the lens of their own insecurities, their own experiences, their own mood on that particular day. Their opinion of you says far more about them than it does about you. James is a 40-year-old entrepreneur from Birmingham, England. When James first launched his small catering business, a family member told him it was a waste of time and that he wasn't the business type. James nearly shut the whole thing down. 3 years later, his catering company serves corporate events across the Midlands and employs 14 people. The family member who criticized him has never apologized, has never acknowledged the success, and James has realized something profound. That person's opinion was never about his business. It was about their own fear of attempting something bold and watching someone else succeed where they didn't dare to try. Other people's disapproval is almost always a projection of their own limitations. It is not a verdict on your potential. Lie 2. I need their approval to feel good about myself. This lie turns other people into emotional vendors you are entirely dependent on for your daily supply of self-worth. But here's the problem. They're not reliable suppliers. People are busy, inconsistent, self-absorbed, and sometimes deliberately unkind. Building your emotional foundation on their opinions is like building a house on sand during hurricane season. True self-worth is not something you receive from the outside. It is something you cultivate on the inside through self-knowledge, self-acceptance, and the slow, patient practice of choosing your own values over other people's preferences. Lie 3. If I stop caring what people think, I'll become selfish and arrogant. This is one of the most common fears people have when they consider releasing approval-seeking patterns. They worry that letting go of others' opinions will turn them into cold, callous, narcissistic individuals who trample over everyone around them. But there's a critical distinction here. There's a profound difference between not needing approval and not caring about people. You can deeply love and respect other people without requiring their constant validation. You can listen to feedback without being destroyed by criticism. You can consider other perspectives without surrendering your sense of self to them. Caring about people and needing their approval are not the same thing. In fact, the people who are most genuinely kind and caring are often the ones who have done enough internal work that they no longer need external validation.
They help others from a place of genuine generosity rather than a desperate need to be liked. Part 5. Real Stories of Freedom. What life looks like when you choose peace. Let us paint a picture of what life actually looks like on the other side of approval addiction. Meet Sarah. Sarah is a 38-year-old woman from Seattle, Washington. For most of her adult life, Sarah was the perfect everything. The perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect coworker, the perfect friend. She said yes when she meant no. She smiled through conversations that made her miserable. She went to events she hated, ate at restaurants she didn't like, and spent her weekends doing things that drained her soul, all because she was terrified of disappointing anyone. At 35, Sarah had a breakdown. Not a dramatic, cinematic breakdown, the quiet, devastating kind that happens when you have been abandoning yourself for so long that there's almost nothing left. She sat in her car one Tuesday afternoon in a Trader Joe's parking lot and cried for 40 minutes because someone asked her what she wanted for her birthday and she genuinely had no idea. She had spent so long curating her preferences for other people that she had completely lost track of her own preferences. Sarah started therapy. She started journaling. She started, slowly and imperfectly, practicing the terrifying and liberating habit of saying what she actually thought. She left the book club she hated. She started taking pottery classes on Saturday mornings, something she had wanted to do for years but had never done because she thought people would find it unusual. She said no to a family gathering that she knew would leave her emotionally depleted, and the world did not end. People were mildly surprised, some were briefly annoyed, and then they moved on. Sarah told her therapist, "I wasted so much of my life worrying about what people would think if I was myself, and the truth is, most people are so caught up in their own lives that they barely noticed." She's right. Now meet Amara. Amara is a 25-year-old Nigerian-British student at University College London who grew up in a family with very specific expectations about what a successful career looked like. Her parents, both medical professionals, had always assumed Amara would become a doctor. She was bright enough. She had the grades. She sat through 7 years of secondary school and 2 years of A-levels preparing for a medical career she had never actually wanted. In her second year of her pre-med program, Amara finally did the thing she had been dreading for years. She sat her parents down and told them she wanted to transfer to a film and media studies program. She wanted to become a documentary filmmaker. She wanted to tell stories about people and cultures that the mainstream media ignored. The conversation was difficult. Her parents were hurt and confused. Her mother cried. Her father didn't speak to her for 3 days. But Amara held her ground. Not aggressively, not cruelly, but with a quiet, determined peace that surprised even herself. She had spent months preparing for this moment, working through the guilt, the fear, and the approval hunger that had kept her trapped, and when the moment came, she was ready. Today, Amara is in her final year of her media program and has already had 2 short documentaries accepted at international film festivals. Her father now watches her films and sends them to his colleagues. Her mother has told her, "I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now." Not every story ends with instant reconciliation. Some relationships do change when you start living authentically. Some people in your life are only comfortable with the version of you that exists to serve their comfort. But the connections that survive your authenticity are infinitely more real, more nourishing, and more lasting than the connections that were built on your performance. And then there's Hiroshi. Hiroshi is a 44-year-old architect from Osaka, Japan. In Japanese culture, as in many Asian cultures, group harmony and social expectations carry enormous weight. The concept of haji, or shame, creates a powerful social pressure to conform, to not stand out, to prioritize the group's perception over individual expression. Hiroshi had internalized these values deeply. He had built an entire life around not causing disruption in his marriage, in his workplace, in his family relationships. But Hiroshi had always wanted to paint, not architectural sketches, real, expressive, emotionally raw paintings. He had kept this desire secret for almost 20 years, mentioning it to nobody, believing that it was somehow inappropriate for a man of his professional standing to pursue something so emotionally open. At 42, he quietly enrolled in a weekend painting class in the Namba district of Osaka. He told nobody for 6 months, and then, slowly, he began to share his work, first with his wife, then with a small online community, then in a local gallery exhibition in the Nakanishima Arts District. Hiroshi told the gallery curator, "I spent 40 years worrying about what my choices would look like to others. The paintings I make now look like what it feels like to finally be free." Part 6. The Practical Path. How to actually stop caring what others think. Understanding the problem is important, but transformation requires practical, repeatable, daily habits. Here's exactly how you begin choosing peace over approval. Step 1. Name the approval hunger when it arises. The first and most powerful step in changing any automatic behavior is simply noticing it. The next time you feel that familiar anxiety, before sending a message, before making a decision, before expressing an opinion, pause and name what is happening. Say to yourself, out loud or in your head, "I am seeking approval right now. I am afraid of being judged." This act of naming is not weakness, it is awareness, and awareness is the beginning of all genuine change. You cannot transform what you refuse to acknowledge. Step 2. Ask the right question. Most people, when facing a decision, unconsciously ask, "What will people think of this?" The transformative shift is to replace that question with, "What do I actually want? What feels true for me?" This sounds deceptively simple. In practice, it's profoundly challenging, especially if you've been asking the first question for most of your life. But the more you practice asking the second question, the more clearly your own voice begins to emerge from beneath all the noise of other people's expectations. A practical exercise. Take a piece of paper and write down 5 decisions you're currently postponing or overthinking. Next to each one, write what you think other people want from you in that situation. Then, on a separate line,
Write what you actually want. What feels most aligned with your own values, your own sense of self, your own vision for your life. The gap between those 2 columns will show you exactly where your approval addiction is costing you most. Step 3. Practice tolerating discomfort. Here is the honest truth about breaking approval-seeking patterns. It feels uncomfortable at first, sometimes deeply uncomfortable. When you start saying no, expressing honest opinions, making choices that not everyone agrees with, there will be a period of adjustment. People who are used to your compliance will push back. Your nervous system, still wired to treat disapproval as danger, will sound alarm bells. This is normal. This is expected. And this is the work. The goal is not to make the discomfort disappear. The goal is to sit with it, breathe through it, and discover, through experience, not just belief, that you can survive it. That the disapproval of others does not actually destroy you. That the world continues to turn, the sun continues to rise, and you continue to exist with your dignity and your sense of self intact, even when someone doesn't like your choice. Step 4. Curate your inner circle deliberately. One of the most underrated strategies for escaping approval addiction is choosing very carefully who you allow to have influence over your self-perception. Not everyone's opinion deserves equal weight. There is a powerful question attributed to research professor Brené Brown. Are you in the arena? Meaning, are the people criticizing you actually trying to do what you're trying to do? Are they showing up, risking, attempting, creating? Or are they comfortably seated in the stands, watching and critiquing from a position of personal safety? Feedback from people who are genuinely invested in your growth, who have earned trust through consistent care and honesty, is worth listening to carefully. The passing judgment of acquaintances, strangers on the internet, or people whose own lives demonstrate no particular wisdom, that feedback deserves significantly less of your precious mental energy. Step 5. Build an identity that belongs to you.
Approval addiction is ultimately a crisis of identity. When you don't have a clear, stable sense of who you are, what you value, what you believe, what kind of person you are committed to being, you become highly susceptible to defining yourself through other people's perceptions. The antidote is identity work. Spend time, real, dedicated, unhurried time, exploring your own values, your own passions, your own standards for how you want to live. Journaling is one of the most effective tools for this. Therapy is another. Deep conversations with people you trust, spending time alone in environments that inspire self-reflection, a walk through Central Park in New York, a quiet morning on the banks of the Thames in London, an evening walk along the Han River in Seoul, or a solitary hour in the ancient quietude of Kyoto's bamboo groves. The goal is to construct a relationship with yourself that is so solid, so honest, and so fundamentally nourishing that the fluctuating opinions of the world outside simply cannot destabilize it. Step 6. Make peace with being misunderstood. Perhaps the deepest work of all is making peace with the fact that you will never be fully understood by everyone, and that this is not a tragedy. It is simply the nature of human complexity and the diversity of human perception. Every person you admire, every artist, entrepreneur, leader, innovator, or ordinary human being who has lived a genuinely authentic life has been misunderstood by somebody, often by many people. The painter Vincent van Gogh sold only one painting during his lifetime. The author J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter manuscript was rejected by 12 different publishers. Walt Disney was fired from his first job at a Kansas City newspaper because his editor believed he lacked imagination. Being misunderstood is not evidence that you are wrong. Sometimes, often, it is evidence that you are simply ahead of the curve, or that you are something that cannot be easily categorized by people who are still operating within the limits of their own comfort zones. Part 7. The Philosophy of Peace. Choosing yourself without apology. We need to talk about what it actually means to choose peace. Choosing peace does not mean choosing indifference. It does not mean becoming emotionally unavailable or building walls around your heart. It does not mean dismissing the beauty of human connection or pretending that relationships don't matter. Choosing peace means choosing as a fundamental daily practice to return to yourself, to your own center, to your own truth. No matter how loud the external noise becomes, no matter how persistent the pressure to perform, no matter how tempting the comfort of conformity, to choose again and again the quiet, radical act of being exactly who you are. There is an ancient Stoic principle articulated beautifully by the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in his private journal, a collection of thoughts we now know as meditations that goes to the heart of this truth. Aurelius wrote that you have very little control over what happens around you, but complete sovereignty over what happens within you. The opinions of others, the approval or disapproval of the crowd, the judgment of your peers. These things exist in the external world, beyond your control. Your response to them, your relationship with your own identity, the standards by which you measure your worth, these live inside you, and they are entirely yours. Choose yourself, not because it is easy, not because it is painless, but because it is the only way to live a life that is genuinely, irreducibly, magnificently your own. Part 8. A New Way of Living, Your Daily Practice of Freedom. Freedom from approval addiction is not a destination you arrive at once. It is a practice you return to every single day, sometimes every single hour. Here is what that daily practice looks like in real, grounded, lived terms. In the morning, before you check your phone, before you expose your still waking mind to the opinion-laden landscape of social media, news, and notifications, take 5 minutes to sit with yourself. Ask yourself, what do I want today? Not what does my boss want, not what will make my followers happy, not what will avoid conflict with my family. What do I want? What kind of day, conversation, or experience would feel true to the person I am trying to become? During the day, when you notice the pull of approval seeking, when you feel the urge to overly explain yourself, to people please, to perform, pause, breathe. Ask yourself, am I doing this because it aligns with my values or because I'm afraid of disapproval? Both answers are valid. The point is not to always make the correct choice. The point is to make conscious choices with full awareness of your motivations. In the evening, instead of replaying the day's conversations and agonizing over whether you said the right things, practice a different kind of reflection. Ask yourself, was I honest today? Was I kind? Did I act in alignment with the person I want to be? These are the only 3 questions that matter. Not did everyone approve of me, but did I approve of myself? Over time, with repetition, with patience, with the inevitable imperfection of genuine human growth, this practice reshapes your inner landscape. The voice that once spent all its energy asking, "What will they think?" grows quieter, and in the space it leaves behind, something extraordinary begins to grow. Your own voice, clear and steady and entirely your own, telling you exactly who you are and exactly what you need to live well. Conclusion: the most important approval you will ever receive. We began this journey with Daniel in Chicago, performing his life for an audience that wasn't paying as much attention as he feared. We met Sophie in London, Kenji in Tokyo, Priya in Mumbai, all caught in the same invisible prison, all paying the same invisible price. We talked about where approval seeking comes from, what it costs you, how it hijacks your mind, and how to begin in practical and meaningful ways to break free from it. But I want to leave you with the single most important idea of this entire conversation, because it is the truth that everything else rests upon. The most important approval you will ever receive is your own. Not your parents' approval, not your partner's approval, not your bosses, your followers, your neighbors, or your culture's approval. Yours. When you lie down at the end of your life, and this is not morbid, it is clarifying, the question that will matter is not, what did they think of me? The question will be, did I live? Did I love? Was I, at least some significant portion of the time, genuinely, courageously, imperfectly myself? That is the only approval worth working for. That is the only verdict that will last. So here is your invitation. Not a challenge, an invitation. Starting today, starting with the very next decision you face, the very next conversation you enter, the very next moment when you feel that familiar pull towards performance and away from authenticity, choose peace. Choose the quiet dignity of your own truth over the fleeting comfort of other people's approval. Choose the full, complicated, beautiful weight of your own life over the hollow lightness of a performance nobody